Welcome, everyone. So imagine for a moment that the Dark Ages weren't simply a period of ignorance, but rather a time when Christianity morphed from a ragtag movement into an empire of control.
Yeah, it's wild to think that when Rome fell in 476 CE, instead of a free fall into chaos, a whole new order was being established. A kind of, religious bureaucracy that stepped right into Rome's former shoes, isn't it?
Absolutely. When the Western Roman Empire collapsed, bishops suddenly were more than spiritual leaders. They became judges, governors, and tax collectors, taking on roles that, we'd associate with imperial power.
I get that. And that's exactly what some historians argue, that Christianity's transformation was less about divine enlightenment and more about, seizing power amid the chaos, right?
Right. Picture this. Before all this, Christianity was vibrant and messy, filled with intellectual debates and philosophical diversity from figures like Origen and Justin Martyr. But then, as chaos reigned, the need for unity at any cost turned that rich pluralism into something dangerous, labeling differences as heresy.
Yep, indeed. So the very period that's been celebrated as a prelude to the Renaissance can also be seen as an era of strict censorship and intellectual quarantine.
Exactly. It's like they traded open inquiry for order, shutting the door, if not slamming it, on curiosity. And speaking of shutting doors, remember how Emperor Justinian in 529 CE closed Plato's academy in Athens?
Yes, I recall. That moment is chilling because it symbolizes the definitive kick out of reason by the rigid confines of religious orthodoxy. Philosophy took a huge hit then.
Yep. Philosophy was essentially branded as dangerous. The idea wasn't to explore truth through reason anymore, but to rely solely on faith with authority locked down by the church.
Right on. I mean, some might say this was the church bringing much needed stability, but isn't it a bit of a double-edged sword? Order came at the expense of independent thought.
Exactly. And that's the irony. Stability was achieved by imposing an intellectual straitjacket. The monasteries, though keeping texts alive, books were painstakingly copied, were equally complicit in censoring what they deemed heretical, trimming away the pagan wisdom and, dissenting opinions.
That's really something to think about. And while the church was building this fortress of orthodoxy in Europe, across the Mediterranean, the Muslim world was doing the opposite, preserving and expanding upon ancient texts in places like the House of Wisdom in Baghdad.
Right. It's like there were these twin paths. One self-imposed quarantine of knowledge and another vibrant, expansive preservation of texts from Aristotle to Galen, a subtle rebellion against the very censorship we're discussing.
Absolutely. It's fascinating how these dynamics played out. And then there's the issue of social order, specifically the role of women. Early Christian communities featured influential figures like Thecla and Macrina the Younger. Yet later, female voices were systematically silenced.
Exactly. The transformation was not just political, it was cultural. With the rise of what some call a theological police state, female leadership was replaced by the ideal of the passive, obedient Mary, erasing a whole spectrum of female influence.
Sadly true. And that kind of censorship wasn't only about ideas, it was about control, turning curiosity into a crime. When dissent and independent reading were branded as heresy, that really set the stage for a completely different kind of society.
Yep. The moment when questioning authority became dangerous, almost like a life or death situation. It's a turning point that echoes all the way to today whenever
sure.
we see authority overreach.
And then we see incidents like in 1022 CE in Orleans, where heretics were burned alive. That wasn't random. It was a message carved in fire about the consequences of dissent.
Exactly. It's as if every act of rebellion against the monopoly on truth was brutally squashed, sending out a clear signal. Adhere or be silenced.
It's a sobering reminder. But here's a question. Don't you think some argue that this strict control eventually paved the way for progress through a reaction against it later on. That is, the Renaissance kind of emerged as a backlash to the oppressive atmosphere.
That's a valid point. It's paradoxical, really. The very foundations of censorship sowed the seeds of rebellion. When ancient texts were reintroduced into Europe through Islamic translations, that influx of knowledge ignited an intellectual awakening.
A real twist of fate. So in a sense, the oppressive measures of the Dark Ages not only delayed progress, but also, inadvertently, preserved bits of ancient knowledge that later sparked a new era of intellectual freedom.
Yes, exactly. It's like by locking away too much, you eventually create an insatiable appetite for what's been hidden, and that hunger ultimately fueled a revolution in thinking, ushering in, the Renaissance.
Right? Absolutely. And as we examine this transition, it also reveals how the drive for power can twist a movement's original intentions. Originally, Christianity was a, sort of countercultural and liberatory force, wasn't it?
Precisely. What began as a message meant to liberate individuals spiritually ended up, over centuries, morphing into an institution obsessed with control and obedience, a complete reversal of its initial promise.
It's ironic indeed. But then, isn't it also possible that this narrative is, a bit oversimplified? I mean, to say that the church was solely about censorship and control might ignore some of its contributions to social order.
That's a fair critique. While it's undeniable that the church imposed severe restrictions, it also provided a kind of stability in a deeply fractured world. But, the cost was intellectual freedom, a trade-off that has haunted Western civilization
Yes, it really
for
is a
centuries.
trade-off. It all seems to boil down to the age-old question: how much order is too much order? When does stability become a straitjacket for innovation and free thought?
Exactly. And it's that uncomfortable truth that lingers. Each time modern institutions try to curb dissent, we almost see echoes of that dark, repressive era.
Certainly resonates. And that, ultimately, reminds us that progress isn't just about accumulating knowledge. It's also about protecting the freedom to question, to challenge, and to reason independently.
Right. Even in what we call a dark age, there were, flickers of rebellion. A reminder that the human spirit always finds a way to push back against imposed limitations.
Absolutely, it's all about that resilience. So, while some historians paint the Dark Ages as a period of ignorance following Rome's fall, another perspective suggests it was more about an evolutionary struggle where the church traded intellectual diversity for authoritarian stability.
Exactly. And that transformation didn't just delay progress. It rewrote the very DNA of Western civilization. The repercussions of that trade-off still ripple through history, evident every time authority clashes with independent thought.
Very true. It's amazing how, by questioning accepted narratives, we can discover these layered complexities in what many consider a monolithic period of history.
Absolutely. When you peel back the layers, you see that every time someone demanded unquestioning belief over evidence, it wasn't just about saving tradition.
Yes, indeed.
It was about consolidating control.
And that's a cautionary tale for today. It's a reminder that when voices are silenced, when curiosity is penalized, the spirit of inquiry, with all its messy, vibrant energy, must inevitably resurface.
Precisely. This history challenges us to, remain vigilant about the price of order. Institutions must balance, the need for structure with the imperative of free, open thought.
Spot on. And isn't it striking how this narrative, however dark, also set the stage for one of the greatest intellectual, cultural, and technological renaissances in history?
Yeah, it really is. By inadvertently curbing knowledge, the church created a vacuum that demanded to be filled, one that eventually burst forth with a renewed passion for inquiry and discovery.
Absolutely. In the end, delving into these alternative perspectives not only enriches our understanding of history, but also echoes the timeless value of questioning established authority.
Exactly. It reminds us that the struggle for intellectual freedom is ongoing, an enduring battle against any system that seeks to prioritize control over inquiry.
Well said. Thanks for this engaging conversation. It really makes you re-examine what you thought you knew about the Dark Ages, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Every time we reflect on history like this, we're reminded to cherish and defend the spirit of free thought, because that's how we move forward.
Yeah, indeed. Here's to questioning narratives and never taking the past at face value. Thanks for joining in this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone. Keep questioning, keep thinking, and always value the freedom to explore ideas.